Hello everybody, Cambing here. A few people have been asking me what my favorite composition in the Heart of the Swarm beta is right now for Zerg, and I keep telling them that my favorite composition is Host Hydra. I like going Host Hydra in pretty much all three matchups, although in ZVZ I'm kind of leaning towards anti-host builds just because everyone's using hosts there. And so I just picked a game, actually just played this one, just to kind of show the potential of Host Hydra. And kind of what is nice about it, what's difficult about it, and so forth. So there's actually been quite a bit of debate about the Hydra list being useful in any matchup right now, I guess, other than ZVZ. And I'm finding it to be pretty good if used correctly. And so I'll kind of show you how I'm using the Hydra to transition to a late game army and so forth. So this is around the 16-minute mark here in this PVZ, and I'm playing against a barcode. And so just to get the state of play right now, I have 18 Hydras on the field along with 23 Hydralists, or 18 Swarm Hosts rather. This game's actually been pretty passive. We look at the units lost tab, we actually haven't really had any units lost at all. Earlier in the video, in the replay, I managed to get some Lings in here to deny the third ones. He actually didn't bother to break down these rocks, which I think is a big mistake. So I got to delay this third quite a bit, which put him on the defensive. And what I did was I didn't really lean on him. In a typical PVZ in Wings of Liberty, I might actually just go Roach Ling and just pressure from there. But I prefer to sit back and get a nice critical mass of Swarm Hosts, usually about, at least 16 or so, to go for a big mid-game push as I transition into the late game. And so, as a result of kind of me putting him on the back foot, my creep spread's actually pretty good right now. I've had two queens pumping out tumors all over the map, so I have good vision. And to transition, so right now I'm kind of getting my hive right now, and I actually forgot my spire. It's going to come back to haunt me in a second. As I transition, I'm laying down a spine wall just to prevent any kind of counterattacking, and I'm taking the middle with my Host Hydra composition. All right, and on his end, he's going for a standard little Protoss Death Ball here with Colossi, Stalkers, and Sentries. And so he just dropped, I think these gateways just went live, so he'll quickly jump up in food here, as we'll see in a bit. And so going ahead and starting up the replay. So what I'm going to do is there's actually a few avenues for me to attack here, and I know he's taking that fourth. And so what I'm going to do is we kind of like pause real quick and check this out. The avenues I have for attack are straight into his natural. Through the exposed rocks here, there's typically rocks blocking this, but early in the game I broke that, and that's how my Lings got in the second time. And then finally, through the back door here to the third, which is also where the fourth is located. And so the nice thing about Swarm Hosts is that the locusts themselves are pretty hardy, and so they require a response from your opponent. You can't just let them sit there just because they like tickle your units or something like that. You actually need to dedicate units and resources to deal with them. And so what I'll be doing with the Swarm Host is kind of zoning him out, forcing the army to go one way, while I use my Hydras to go another way and snipe stuff. And why I prefer Hydras over Roaches is that Hydras just straight up do more damage than Roaches. And part of the debate about Roaches versus Hydras is that Roaches themselves are less less costly than Hydras per supply. Hydras are 125, I believe, just double checking that. No, 150, sorry. 100 minerals, 50 gas. Roaches are 75-25. And so per supply, Roaches are easier to mass and produce. But here with my Host Hydra composition, I'm not really trying to recycle Roaches here. I want the Hydras to stay alive as much as possible, and they're there to do damage rather than kind of soak. And so Hydras do a better job for that, augmented by the fact that I managed to get my creep line out this far. I'm able to kind of poke at all three fronts that I outlined on creep. So we'll see how I abuse that mobility in a bit. So restarting the game. I do this here. It turns out not to matter because I initially wanted to rally here. I actually didn't notice. If I jump to my cam real quick, pausing again, I actually had my rally set to here, and then I noticed that the locusts all decided to travel south, which means that since I had set my rally at this point, there's a full wall here. And so I just reset my rally down here just to poke and see what's going on. And so it turns out that's where all his units are. And so we're going to kind of see here, I'm going to pause real quick. Notice the resources lost tab. These are locusts attacking into a choke. So you kind of see here, he manages to get 2 force fields off. I kill 1 stalker, and that's about it. And so here, right, locusts tend to be, at first glance, they don't seem to be that effective. I managed to kill 1 unit, and looks like he's going to be pushing into my creeped up middle of the map now. The key thing is I wasted 2 force fields. And so my game plan here is my harassment's based off of 2 things. I want to snipe and deny bases, like this exposed 4th, these buildings here. But I also want to deny what's going to allow him to have a very scary push. And it's not really the Colossi, although the Colossi are going to raffle snot my composition in a minute, or the Stalkers, it's those sentries. The sentries with those force fields are what's the problem. And since he doesn't have a critical mass of Colossi yet, and he typically wouldn't at this stage of the game, he's going to be forced to burn force fields in order to be cost effective against my Swarm Host. And so what I'm going to do, and this is the aim of my game, is to just try to throw Swarm Host at him to force him to use force fields. Use up that sentry energy, maybe even get lucky, snipe some sentries, because stalkers, or sentries tend to float in front of a pack of units. And then hopefully when the big push comes, he has less sentries, lots of gateway units, and Colossi. And so my Hydra is Swarm Hosts, and then hopefully Corruptors, which again, I forgot the Spire, I've just put it down now, we'll be able to clean up. So resume the game. So he's going to try to poke up here. Second wave comes in. So again, looking at the units lost tab, I'm about to kill 1 sentry. You kind of see here, this is what I was talking about. If the sentries manage to clump up in front, they're slow, so they kind of stay in front while the stalkers kind of sit in the back. And this is actually really bad for him. These force fields are absolutely necessary. If he doesn't land those, he loses, looks like about 700 gas worth of sentries. So I managed to get 1, 2, 3 sentries there. Pretty huge. And he's forced to put a full force field wall up. And what I do is I come in with the Hydras just to poke, see if I can grab anything else. Maybe grab an extra sentry or 2. I think I lost a Hydra there. But that's going to be kind of the rhythm that I want to get into. Every Locust wave, I'm going to send in the Hydras if they're not harassing, just to add additional DPS. If you kind of look at a Locust has 3 range. Hydra has 6. Colossi with range has 9. Okay? So, if the Colossi are parked in the back appropriately, we have Locust shooting 3 range at the Stalker line. Stalkers themselves are probably about like 1.5, 2 range, and this is about 2 Stalkers deep. So the Locust can barely buffer the Hydras if positioned properly. And that's going to be kind of the key thing for me being cost effective. Host Hydra itself is not a unit comp like Roachling where you just kind of throw waves and waves of units at them. Really what you want to be doing is looking for that one big engagement where you become ridiculously cost effective. And you're going to see instances here, and I'll be playing through this again, I'll just start it up again, where I am cost effective, I'm not cost effective. But for now, I'm going to be sending in Locusts here. Locusts also act as scouts at this point. They let me see what's going on. Here I forget to set the rally. Again, I'm not the world's greatest player. Let's speed things up a little bit. And so he's forced to be pinned in his base here. And so what I did is I'm going to set the rally on my Locust as to wherever I think his army is right now. I just want to keep tapping the army, challenging it, prodding it, just trying to force out energy, since he's kind of taking a passive stance in this. So going in here, the Locusts catch this army, and so what I do in the meantime is since I had a feeling that his army was down here, I'm going to send my Hydras somewhere else to snipe stuff. And again, the creep is what makes this possible pre-hive. No, not necessarily possible, a lot more effective. You can see I'm getting speed upgrade for my Hydras. And so if you don't know about the speed upgrade makes Hydras move 25% faster off creep, which is, I got to get this guy's off creep. Oh, no, I think they're all on creep right now. Oh yeah, it's melee. Which is not as fast as they move on creep, but significantly faster. So unpausing it, slowing it down again. I'm going to do a good job here, and I'm looking for free damage. Like, again, I'm not trying to throw away these units. Hydras are costly. They're worth a lot. They allow me to do things like this, like pressure, and force his army in different positions. So for here, for example, he has to move his army up to contest the Hydras. What I did in the meantime was I re-rallied my Locusts into that hole. Oops, sorry. And so here's the awesome part. I swung the Hydras back around. And by fortune, I managed to catch these Colossi here. Almost managing to kill one. But the intention is, since I drew his forces this way, I'm going to go attack this way now and get some free kills. So popping over here. I don't think I'm going to get this in time. That would have actually been very clutch. I'm going to get a whole bunch of freeway gateways here. What I could do to make this a lot more optimized, I could have dropped changelings and scouted this area. But luckily my creep's good enough that I can see this Colossi come out, so I know that he's trying to barrel up the middle, so I'm going to go around. Alright? And so before I actually get to the sketchy part of this, let me back up real quick and kind of show it from his perspective, because I think that's pretty instructive. So let me go ahead and switch to his vision, his camera view, ×2 it. And so this is the kind of nice thing about swarm hosts. They're very APM unintensive from just kind of a zoning perspective. My hosts, if you look at the main map, are positioned around right here. And so I don't really have to do anything to babysit them. I just need to point them to the appropriate spots, and I have to just babysit the Hydras. Him, on the other hand, he actually needs to be watching these multiple fronts. Sorry, speeding that up a little more so he takes his third. There you go. So he's kind of stuck. He hasn't really pushed down the map yet, and I think he was overly passive. He probably could have prodded with this army, especially with his mothership core being able to recall. And so he's establishing his fourth right now. He sees the creep. Starting to become a little bit dangerous. Speeding up just a little bit more. So right around here is when he gets the first locust wave. So he snaps off the force fields in time. Speeding things up again. So now his inclination is going to want to go out to clear out creep. More locusts come by. He's going to lose some sentries, some actually really important sentries. Lost 3 there. He has to replenish with 4 more. That's 400 gas. And so he's kind of pinned in the base because he knows the locusts are out there pounding, pounding away at the front door. And so here's that little moment where I split him up quite a bit. So slowing it down and then repausing. The locusts come here to challenge, and I didn't have them positioned well enough to actually deal damage, but it's enough to kind of scare them. Hydralists are coming in at the 4th. And so I pull them out. He's forced to go that way, unless he wants to call my bluff that the Hydralists aren't there. The locusts are still... The previous locust wave comes in, taps the natural, draws his attention out. Hydras are swinging this way, manages to snipe a Colossi, and then the most important thing of the game happens, in my opinion. I finally get a good set of locusts here. And so just looking at where his vision is right now, he's looking at these Colossi. And I'm going to unpause. And so he doesn't manage to actually get any force fields off. And so after that locust exchange, he actually only has 3 sentries left, and that's huge. And so that's kind of the nice thing about swarm hosts. It requires attention on the part of the opponent, but the Zerg is free to kind of micro at will around them. And so the opponent has to be a little crafty about how he deals with the locusts. In particular, he needs good vision across the map in order to kind of see where these locusts are going and to see what lines he could travel in order to counterattack. For example, just jumping back to his camera point of view and then backing up a little bit. So at this point here, we see Hydras. We have army coming here because we're forced to deal with the Hydras. And he actually does an interesting cut, I think is very important. It's actually kind of a forced cut. Whoops, sorry. Go ahead and speed this up again. He's forced to go up the middle here. Just mostly because like the buildings here are being blown up. But here's an interesting thing, and I'm not sure he was thinking that, but I was certainly aware of it at the time. Hydras and swarm hosts themselves don't stand well against this army. Combined, they can actually have a chance. But since the Hydras are split up here and the swarm hosts are split up here, even though it looks like a surround, the Protoss will actually do just fine. So what'll be interesting is if you cut along here and try to catch these Hydras. The good thing is that I had creep positioned out all this way so my Hydras can catch onto the highway here and be safe. So yeah, that's kind of the harassment part of this. So now we'll see the defensive part. So at this point, Hydras are retreating back. He catches these 2 Overseers. Just bad kind of A move on my part. And so I'm going to slow this down to faster. Locusts are a little ill-positioned. We're going to look at those units lost tab. So right now it's 1,300, about 4,000 units lost. And so here is kind of what I want as far as what I would call kind of delay tactics. I want these swarm hosts in front, and right now he has 7 colossi. So these die pretty fast. But it still takes, 2 or 3 blasts to kill them. They're still kind of hardy. They have 1 armor. I didn't actually keep up on my upgrades very well. That's one of my faults I'm still trying to work on with this build. 65 health. So they can last okay against colossi. Enough to buy the Hydras a few seconds to actually deal damage. I'm going to slow this down to normal. And so this is kind of the situation that I want. Locust buffering in front. As you kind of see, this is exactly like the ranges work out rather precisely with the Locust right in front. Hydra is able to shoot the front line of Stalkers in the back. And that's that. And so here, Locusts are out. Locust time ran out. And so the new wave comes in. And this is kind of the tricky part. In between the shuffling of when the Hydras need to get behind the Locust, they kind of path into each other. And it kind of makes for this awkward moment. And you see here, I lose quite a few Hydras in that mix. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to back off and then reset up once the locust or the swarm host cooldown resets. And so all of this is really just free damage. I'm not necessarily actually hitting anything. Like for example, this Stalker, I think the net damage I'm going to do is like a Stalker's worth of damage. And he blinks back, so I don't actually manage to kill anything. But this is all free. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to buy time for Corruptors to come out. Which should have honestly come out earlier. But them's the breaks. And so I'm going to show you, this is actually an example of a really bad, it seems like it would be good. And normally with Roach Hydra, this wouldn't be a bad position to be in. I have a spine wall. I have Hydras, and I have my Locust Wave about to pop. So it seems natural that I want to engage at this point in order to deal some damage assisted with the Spine Crawlers. However, the Spine Crawlers do the very annoying thing of actually funneling everything in. And so you kind of see here, all of this gets funneled in this choke. And so the Swarm Host Locusts die really quickly, and it doesn't actually help at all. Just backing up again real quick. Looking at the units lost tab here. So the Locusts do a good job of buffering for the Spine Crawlers. However, the Hydras themselves actually really can't get in position quick enough in order to exploit the few seconds that the Locusts buy. So I've actually shouldn't probably have used the Hydra list there. I should have just let the Spine Crawlers do their thing. And so I back up again all the way. I'm perfectly happy to concede this base. I'm just looking for the ultimate, for some better positioning here, and I'm going to get it in a second. So here's one more bad engagement. This is actually just an example of poor micro on my part. Locust Wave coming in. I have 16, 17, 18, 20 Hydras, and I just kind of A-move them both together. And this is what happens when you do this with this composition. You kind of see there I just lost like 4 or 5 Hydras immediately, and I didn't lose any Locusts yet. And so that's bad. And so this composition is pretty micro dependent. You really have to understand how pathing works so you can get your Hydras around your Locusts, and you also need to have good rhythm just to be able to pop the Swarm Host down in time and then kind of follow up with the Hydras and pull back. And so here he's going to get some good free kills. I'm going to get quite a bit of damage actually because these Colossi were exposed, but he pulls back, so still hasn't really lost anything. So I look kind of in a horrendous position. Production tab. Thought I had some Corruptors. Yeah, my Corruptor Wave is here. And so, pausing, slowing down one more time. This is the good encounter. And the reason why it's good here is we kind of look at the positioning. What Protoss normally wants is he wants Colossi in the back, Gateway in the front to buffer. And what I've been saying this whole time is that Swarm Hosts buffer the Colossi pretty well, and then Hydras can tear up the Gateway units. And so these Corruptors are going to be able to force the Colossi back even more in order to make sure that the Hydras live as long as possible to deal with the Gateway army. And so, unpausing, we're going to see this in a sec. Look at the units lost tab. And again, like I said, this is a big one, not necessarily one-time engagement composition, but kind of like a big moment composition. It's not like Roachling where you kind of barrel your opponent down. You're looking for one good engagement that allows you to be ridiculously cost-effective, and this one's it. And so just kind of looking at my setup right now, I have Hydra's behind Locusts. The gateway unit in the front's kind of dwindling here. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any reinforcement waves. Thankfully, because of my creep spread, he can't just plop a pile in there. And Colossi are kind of pinned back well out of range of my Hydras. And so unpausing, the Corruptor's going to come in, snipe everything. Post Hydra is dealing ridiculous amounts of damage to the front here. I'm barely losing any resources. And we're going to say I'm going to be able to clean this up pretty easily. And that's kind of the engagement that I'm looking for with this composition. And it kind of works and it doesn't work. Like, there's plenty of times where I kind of bungle this and I end up losing my Hydras. But when I do win, we end up in this situation where I think I started this at like, just dropping back a second before the fight began. Yeah, approximately 8.5k resources lost. And then I end up only losing about 1k worth there. It's ridiculously cost effective, assuming you can position appropriately. And so now that I pushed him, I underestimate his gateway count a little bit. He's able to actually pull off one remax here. But he doesn't have the Colossi count to back it up. So I'm just going to sit here, park at the fourth, take it out. Try to press my advantage here, because I know that was a very cost-effective trade on my part. What I should have done is I should have sent the Locust here to actually buffer. But I kind of sent him here to blitz the buildings. And the reason why I should have buffered is to stop precisely this coming along. And so he's going to do something that I kind of debate as to whether it was a good move. I think I might be too far ahead for it to matter too much. But he's going to blink on top of these and try to just snipe as many as you can. It's kind of similar to what you would do with Broodlords. Just kind of send in the gateway units to sacrifice themselves to kill the high value units. At this point I already have my Greater Spider up, so I just need to hold on. And also, once the Locust Wave pops, they actually just tear the Stalkers apart. They're standing on top of them. So once I get the cleanup on the Colossi, it's kind of game from there. And I guess the other thing too that's kind of important to think about is on the Protoss side of things, what's really important, just like with Zerg, is kind of retaining your valuable units. Like here, the Colossi, they hit a critical mass where they could just deal tons, like nullify this set of Swarm hosts they had. In that engagement, he only had 2 Colossi. And so, in some sense, if this was like back up here, and he had blinked all his Soccer Sword onto my Swarm host line, you know, things would be different as long as he'd retained the Colossi. But here, since he didn't retain the Colossi, I'm able to just overpower him. So speeding things up just to get to the end of it. Just jumped back to my base by accident. I finally kind of get the money composition I'm looking for. Broodlord host Hydra. And I like this endgame composition because it's ridiculously powerful. Something I should be sprinkling in is Infestors. Just like 5 or so. Just to, I guess, you know, because Infestors are good. And right now I'm preferring this composition more just because Infestors, they have a lot of one-time punch to it. In that, like, without a very high count of Infestors, once they're out of energy, they're very much dead weight. Hosts, on the other hand, the buffer they provide is constant, albeit slow. And so here, he's actually counter-pushing as a last-ditch effort, so I pull back my my hosts and my Hydras because I have sufficient number of Broods and Corruptors that I know that since this army is up here, there's no way that he can defend against this. He's really just trying to base raise. So speeding things up just a little bit more, just to round out this game. He's going to slowly try to push. I'm going to totally destroy his bottom base. And the fun thing is here, again, we got to look at what I have here. I have about half the Stormhouse I had and a bunch of Hydras. This can't actually stand up to this composition in one fell swoop. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to send host waves at him. I'm going to slowly whittle this down while expanding to the bottom because I know he's dead. Not going to kind of overcommit this army. I also have a whole bunch of spines I'm just going to throw up there in a second. So he's going to be forced to go up here. And I'm just going to spine him in. And slowing it down real quick. He's going to leave these 2 Colossi exposed. I kill them, and that's pretty much game. He has no way of being able to take out this army. And that's that. So yeah, Host Hydra is pretty good. I really like Hydras in Heart of the Swarm. Not so much on their own, but just because they complement Swarm Hosts so well. And I do this a lot also in TVZ. Against mech, Hydras do very well just because the one thing that can threaten this composition is really tanks and then Banshees. And Hydras do okay against tanks, and they do, very well against Banshees. So it's a good complement. So yeah, hope you enjoyed. Thanks.